Virgo, when something stops working, your first response is almost always to analyze it. That is simply how you are built. You look at the situation, you identify the variable that is not functioning as intended, you develop a more effective approach, and you try again because for you, problems are meant to be solved. They are puzzles to be worked through with patience and intelligence, and your mind is exceptionally well equipped to do exactly that. But there is a difference, a meaningful, important difference, between a problem that needs solving and a path that needs redirecting. A problem that needs solving is one where the destination is still correct, and the work is to find the better route to reach it. A path that needs redirecting is something more significant. It means the destination itself has changed, or rather, the universe has recognized something about where you are actually meant to be heading that your own careful planning had not yet accounted for. And the signs gathering around your life right now are not pointing to an error in your execution. They are not telling you that you did something wrong or thought something through incorrectly. They are pointing to something far more interesting than that, a course correction that life itself has arranged, working with a precision and a perspective that your analytical mind, for all its brilliance, simply does not have access to from where it stands. The redirection coming for Virgo is not a setback. It is a recalibration. And what it is recalibrating you toward is better, genuinely, specifically, measurably better, than where the original plan was headed. 1. Something you invested genuine effort and careful thought into has come to an unexpected standstill. You did not take it lightly. That is something worth saying clearly at the outset because you rarely take anything lightly, and this was no exception. Whatever has reached this standstill, you gave it what you give everything that matters to you. Your careful attention, your methodical follow-through, your patient and thorough investment of genuine effort over time. You prepared. You refined. You made adjustments when adjustments were needed. You did the work in the slow, quiet, unsexy way that you always do, the work that you believe in, without shortcuts, without cutting corners, with the kind of sustained commitment that most people cannot sustain. And yet, the standstill arrived anyway. Not because of any failure of yours. Not because you miscalculated or underestimated or approached it wrongly. The standstill arrived because it is a signal, the first in the sequence of signs that the redirection is underway. When movement stops for Virgo, the temptation is immediate and powerful. To analyze harder, to find the flaw in the execution, to try a more refined approach that might restore the momentum. And sometimes that is exactly the right response. But this time, Virgo, the standstill is asking for something different. It is asking you to be still with it for a moment, to resist the impulse to immediately problem solve and instead to simply observe, what does this pause actually feel like? Not what does it mean logistically, not what does it require from you in terms of your next move, but what does the stillness itself feel like when you stop pushing against it? Is there, perhaps, somewhere beneath the frustration of the halt, a quiet that is almost a relief? A part of you that needed permission to stop and found it in the unexpected pause? Pay attention to that, because sometimes the universe stops our movement not to punish us for our effort, but to give us the space to look up from the path we were on and see whether it is still the one we actually want to be walking. 2. You feel a pull toward a direction that was not in any plan you made deliberately. You know your plans. You know what you decided. You know where you intended to focus your energy, what you were building toward, what the next steps were supposed to look like according to your own careful assessment. And then, alongside all of that known architecture, something has begun to pull at you from a direction that was not in the blueprint. A feeling more than a thought. An inclination that is difficult to rationalize. A persistent interest in something that does not obviously fit with what you had already decided was the priority. Your analytical mind may have been dismissing this pull, filing it under the category of distraction or impulse, or the kind of indulgence you allow yourself only when the important work is done. Because you are practical and what you had planned was practical, and this pull seems to be asking you towards something less defined, something that has not been vetted by your research and your careful assessment. But the pull is not going away, and this is significant. Virgo, your mind is well trained to override feeling with reason. You have learned to trust your analysis more than your impulses, and for good reason. Your impulses are not always more reliable than your thinking. But this is not an impulse. This is something more persistent and more grounded than that. This is a genuine directional pull, the kind that does not fade when you ignore it, but instead returns, calmly and consistently, to make itself known again. Something in the fabric of your life is orienting toward this new direction the way a compass orients toward north, not because of a decision you made, but because of where the actual magnetic field is pointing. The pull is worth following even tentatively, even without knowing exactly where it leads. Even while you are still committed to the things you already planned, let it become visible to you. Let yourself acknowledge it honestly. The direction it is pointing may be the one the redirection is preparing you for. 3. The people and situations that were holding you in an old pattern have begun to fall away. You may have noticed that certain things in your life have become less present without any deliberate decision on your part to move away from them. People who used to occupy regular space in your daily experience have grown more distant. Not through any dramatic falling out, not through a conflict or a defined ending, but through a gradual loosening that has happened almost organically. Situations and environments that were once a consistent part of your routine have become less available, or less appealing, or simply less present in the way they were before. Even certain habits of thought, the specific patterns of worry or the particular loops of overthinking that have been so familiar, may have begun to loosen their grip in ways you did not specifically engineer. Virgo, this falling away is not random. It is not coincidence and it is not loss, even when it carries some of the emotional texture of loss. What is falling away is specifically what was holding you in a configuration of your life that you have grown beyond. The people, the situations, the habits, the patterns, they were real and they served real purposes. But the version of you they were shaped around is not exactly the version of you that exists now. You have grown in ways that are sometimes invisible even to yourself, slowly, quietly, in the deep interior way that Virgo grows away from any audience. And as you have grown, the things that belong to the earlier configuration have begun, naturally and almost inevitably, to release their hold. This can feel disorienting. It can feel like instability, like ground shifting beneath you that you had counted on to stay fixed. But what it actually is, when you step back far enough to see it clearly, is space. The clearing of space that was occupied by what belonged to an earlier chapter, making room for what belongs to the one that is beginning. 4. What appeared to be an obstacle is slowly revealing something valuable that was hidden behind it. There was something in your way. A blockage, a difficulty, a circumstance that placed itself between you and where you were trying to go, and you responded to it as you respond to most obstacles, with patient, methodical effort. You worked on it. You tried different approaches. You gave it your consistent attention over a sustained period of time. And at some point, perhaps, you began to wonder whether the obstacle was simply intractable, whether it was one of those things that, despite all your careful effort, was simply not going to yield. But obstacles have a second nature that becomes visible only to those who stay with them long enough. They are not only what they appear to be on the surface. Behind most of the significant obstacles in a person's life, there is something waiting. Something that the obstacle was, in a sense, keeping safe until the right moment for it to be revealed. Think of it this way: if you had moved past the obstacle easily and quickly, you would have moved past everything behind it just as quickly. You would have blown through the territory where something important was sitting, without the slowness required to notice it. The difficulty itself was the mechanism that kept you in the same place long enough to finally see what was there. And what is beginning to become visible now, what is slowly revealing itself from behind the thing that was blocking you, is valuable. Genuinely valuable. It is information or an understanding or an opportunity, or a quality of yourself that the obstacle was positioned in front of with a kind of precision that almost seems intentional. Because it was intentional. Not by any human hand, but by the logic of the universe, which understands that the things most worth finding are the ones that require the right conditions to become visible. The obstacle was the condition, and now that you have met it long enough and honestly enough, what was behind it is beginning to show itself to your perceptive eyes. 5. Guidance has been arriving through sources your analytical mind did not expect to trust, and yet does. You are a person who trusts sources that have earned that trust, sources with a track record, with demonstrable reliability, with the kind of consistency that your careful mind can verify over time. You do not extend trust casually or quickly. You observe first. You assess. You look for evidence of accuracy before you allow yourself to rely on something as a genuine guide. And then something changes. Guidance begins to arrive through channels that do not fit your usual criteria for trustworthy sources. Through a conversation that seems too offhand to carry real wisdom, but somehow does. Through a line in something you read at the exact right moment, in a book or a passage that had been sitting unread for months, opened at precisely the right page. Through a dream that leaves a residue of clarity you cannot fully explain but cannot fully dismiss. through a feeling, that persistent, calm, directional inner signal that is not the anxious noise of overthinking, but something quieter and steadier beneath it. Through the unexpected words of someone who does not know you well enough to know how accurately what they said landed. Your analytical mind notes all of this with a mixture of interest and skepticism. The skepticism is honest. You have been burned before by things that felt true and turned out not to be. But the interest is also honest, because the guidance arriving through these unexpected channels has a quality of accuracy that is difficult to rationalize away. It is landing in the places where your most important questions are. It is speaking directly to the things you are most genuinely uncertain about. And your mind, the same careful, discerning, evidence-based mind that has always been your most reliable instrument, is finding it difficult to dismiss. This is worth paying attention to, Virgo. When the most analytical sign in the zodiac finds itself trusting what it did not expect to trust, that is not naivety. That is a deeper level of intelligence beginning to engage. If this message is resonating with your sign right now, trust that it is not a coincidence. When the universe wants to speak to you, it sends exactly the right signal at exactly the right moment. And you are here because you needed to hear this today. Your support, whether as a subscriber or as a member of this community, is what keeps these messages alive. The ones that touch hearts, awaken minds, and transform lives. If this video has been making sense to you, drop in the comments the day you were born. Let us keep going. 6. What you thought you were working toward no longer satisfies the way it once promised to. You chose a direction. You pointed yourself toward it and you committed. And the commitment was real, the effort you put in was real, the intention behind it was real, the days and seasons of work you gave to it were real. None of that is in question. But something has shifted in how the destination feels when you imagine reaching it. Something that was once genuinely motivating, that picture of arrival, that vision of what it would feel like to have accomplished the thing you set out toward, has lost some of its pull. You may have felt this as a quiet, uncomfortable question that arises in unguarded moments. Is this actually what I want? Not because anything went wrong, not because the goal became impossible, but because you changed. And when you change, the things you are moving toward need to be re-examined, not for their difficulty but for their actual alignment with who you are becoming. There is a particular disorientation in discovering that a goal you genuinely committed to no longer satisfies in the way it once promised to. It can feel like a failure of motivation, like something is wrong with your follow-through or your discipline. But Virgo, this is not a failure of anything. This is your deepest intelligence speaking with unusual clarity about a mismatch between the direction you chose and the direction your life is now actually pointing. The goal was right for the version of you that set it. That version was real and its choices were valid. But the version of you that exists today, shaped by everything that has happened in the interval between then and now, needs something different. Not necessarily more, not necessarily less, different, more aligned, more honestly reflective of what actually matters to you at this level of your growth. The dissatisfaction you are feeling is not the enemy of your progress. It is the compass pointing you toward the goal that will truly satisfy, the one that belongs to who you are now, not who you were when you first mapped the route. 7. A new path is emerging in an area where no path existed before. This is one of the most remarkable signs of a genuine redirection, not the closing of a path, but the appearance of one where there was previously no path at all. And it is remarkable precisely because it cannot be planned for. You cannot prepare for terrain that did not previously exist. You cannot research or assess or map something that was not there to be mapped when you last looked. And yet, something is appearing in your life that has this quality of genuineness, of newness, of possibility that genuinely was not available before this moment. It may be subtle at first. The first signs of a new path often are a faint clearing in what had been solid resistance, a first glimpse of something on the other side of a wall that has been there so long you had stopped thinking about what might be on the other side, a small but real indicator that a direction you had not considered is actually available, if you are willing to take a few exploratory steps into unfamiliar territory. Virgo, you are not naturally drawn to unfamiliar territory. Your instinct is to understand the terrain before you move through it, to research before you arrive, to know as much as possible before you commit your energy. And in most circumstances, that instinct is your friend. But the new path appearing before you now requires a different quality of engagement. It asks for the kind of tentative, curious, genuinely open exploration that your careful mind does not always allow. It asks you to move towards something before you fully understand it. Not recklessly, not without attention, but with the honest acknowledgement that you cannot know yet what this new direction holds. What you can know is this: the path is real. It appeared for a reason, and it is waiting for you to notice it well enough to take the first step. 8. A quiet, growing courage for a completely different direction is building inside you. Courage is not always loud. For Virgo especially, it tends to be the quiet kind, the kind that does not announce itself or perform, but that simply grows steadily and without fanfare in the interior until it reaches the point where acting on it becomes more natural than continuing to hold back. And something of exactly this quality is building in you now. It is not the absence of fear. You are too honest with yourself to pretend that stepping in a completely different direction from the one you had mapped carries no uncertainty, no vulnerability, no risk that your careful mind is fully aware of. The fear may be present, the doubt may visit, but underneath both of them, something is growing that is more fundamental than either. A quiet, growing readiness to move toward the different direction that the redirection is revealing. This courage is different from the courage you have had to access in the past, when you pushed through difficulty or stayed in a hard situation with determined persistence. This courage is not about pushing through. It is about stepping toward the unfamiliar, toward the thing you were not originally pointed at, toward the version of your life that requires you to trust a larger intelligence than just your own planning, to trust the pattern of signs and signals that have been accumulating, to trust the falling away and the revealing and the new path appearing, to trust that all of it is leading somewhere worth going. The courage building in you knows something that your analytical mind is only beginning to accept, that the direction you are being redirected toward is right for you. Not right by the standards of the original plan, right by the standards of your actual life, your actual gifts, your actual deepest needs. Let the courage keep growing. It is building toward the moment you need it most. 9. Peace is arriving around something you once fought hard to keep on its original course. There was something you held on to tightly, something you fought for, perhaps quietly, in the interior way that Virgo fights, without visible drama but with enormous sustained effort and will. Something you kept trying to steer back to what you believed was the right course, even as the conditions kept redirecting it, even as the signs kept suggesting that the original course might not be the one it was meant to stay on. You fought for it because you believed in it, because you had put real effort and real care into it, because the investment made it feel like something that needed to succeed in the specific form you had envisioned for it. And fighting for the things you believe in is not a flaw. It is one of the qualities that makes you someone others can rely on, someone who does not give up on what matters, someone who shows up even when the showing up is hard. But at some point something shifts. The fighting starts to feel different from the inside. Less like commitment and more like resistance. Resistance to something that the larger intelligence of your life is trying to show you. And into that space where the fighting begins to tire, where the grip begins to loosen, where the effort to maintain the original course becomes more exhausting than the path forward itself could ever be, into that space something else arrives. Peace. Not the peace of giving up. Not the peace of defeat or resignation or helplessness. The peace of release. The peace of finally allowing what needs to move, and trusting that where it is moving, where everything is being redirected, is somewhere that is genuinely better than where you were trying to hold it. That peace is arriving. You may already feel it at the edges. Let it come in fully. It belongs to you. And it is the sign that the redirection is not something happening to you, but something working for you, in ways that your fighting could not see because the fighting kept your eyes on what you were trying to hold. 10. When you look back honestly, you can see that every single closed door was preparing you with extraordinary precision for this exact moment. This last sign requires something of you that the other 9 do not require in quite the same way. It requires you to step back, to put enough distance between yourself and the details of your life's timeline that you can see the shape of it from a wider angle. The pattern that only becomes legible when you stop standing with your face pressed against any one of its individual moments. And when you do, when you allow yourself that broader view, the honest retrospective gaze that your analytical mind is actually very well suited to if you give it the right frame, you will see something that may stop you in your tracks. Every door that closed you can now see was necessary. Every path that did not open when you pushed against it, every plan that stalled or failed or simply did not arrive at the outcome you were aiming for, Every one of those apparent disappointments was, in hindsight, precise. Precisely timed. Precisely shaped to remove you from a trajectory that would have led somewhere less suited to who you actually are. Precisely configured to redirect your considerable energy and intelligence toward the path that is coming into focus now. The universe does not close doors randomly. It does not scatter obstacles without purpose. For Virgo especially, for the careful, methodical, deeply intentional energy of this sign, every apparent failure was actually a form of guidance. It was life saying, not that way, toward the thing you are actually meant for. And now, standing at this moment, with the redirection fully underway and the new direction beginning to emerge, you can look back over everything that did not work and see it, if you allow yourself to look honestly, as the most precise and intelligent preparation imaginable. Every closed door was preparing you for this. Every redirection, every delay, every moment that felt like failure, all of it was building with extraordinary care the exact version of you that this next chapter requires. You are that version now. And what is opening ahead of you is everything that all of it was preparing you to receive. If this message resonated with your sign, trust that it is not a coincidence. When the universe wants to speak to you, it always sends exactly the right signal. And you are here because you needed to hear this today. Your support as a subscriber or as a member of this community is what keeps these messages alive. They are the messages that touch, awaken, and transform. If this video made sense to you, leave in the comments the day you were born. Virgo, redirections are not failures. They are not evidence that you did anything wrong, chose anything poorly, or missed something that you should have seen. A redirection is life working with a level of precision and care that your planning mind, extraordinary as it is, simply does not have full access to from where it stands inside your own story. The signs described in this message are not happening despite everything you built and planned and committed to. They are happening because of it. Because of the quality of person you are. Because of the genuine effort and honest intention you have poured into your life over a long period of time. The universe redirects people who are genuinely worth redirecting. People whose energy and capability and depth of character are needed somewhere more significant than where they were originally headed. You are being redirected towards something that fits you better than where you were going. That may be difficult to fully believe right now, especially if the redirection has involved loss or disappointment, or the discomfort of releasing something you worked hard for. The difficulty is real. The feelings it carries are real. And you do not have to minimize any of that in order to also hold the truth that what is coming is better, more aligned, more nourishing, more genuinely suited to the full scope of who you are. There is a quality in Virgo that the redirection will call upon specifically. Your capacity to trust a process, even when you cannot yet see the full outcome. You have done this before, trusted a method before the results were visible, followed a logical path before you could confirm where it led. What is being asked of you now is the same essential trust, applied not to a plan you designed but to a course that life itself is steering. That requires a particular kind of faith. Not blind faith. Not the abandonment of your perceptive intelligence. But the grounded, honest, eyes-open trust of someone who has examined the evidence, followed the signs, and recognized that the pattern is genuine and the direction is real. Walk toward it, Virgo. With your characteristic care, your quiet courage, your observant presence. Trust that every closed door was a door that was closed for you, not against you. Trust that what is being redirected toward you has been shaped with the same precision that shaped all the signs that brought you to this moment of recognition. Trust that the best of what is coming has not yet arrived, and that when it does, you will know exactly, precisely, in the full depth of your knowing, that it was worth everything the path required. The redirection is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of the chapter where the story finally goes where it was always meant to go.